With the spot the New York Rangers are currently in and all the rumors that have been circulating around, it definitely seems like the Rangers are going to be a very active team at this upcoming NHL trade deadline. Whether they are looking to really kind of, sell some players off or possibly even maybe make some kind of buying moves as well. So in today's video, we're going to kind of cover this whole situation here and some of the news that has come out involving Zac Jones and kind of 4 destinations that could be, a possible decent kind of landing spot for him to be traded to, as well as we'll talk a bit about some more kind of trade news involving the Rangers and kind of a possible plan for this upcoming trade deadline from a very reputable NHL insider. So let's begin here and talk about the Zac Jones kind of 4 trade destinations, and then we'll carry on to the other trade news later on in the video. But starting off here with Zac Jones, a little while ago now, he was given permission by the New York Rangers to go out there and kind of look for his own kind of trade. That was the reports that came out. And, I thought it made sense there. Zac Jones has been a player on this team who I think has, kind of been in an unfortunate spot over his NHL career with this Rangers team. I think he is an NHL caliber defenseman for sure, but I think the way the Rangers have used him is a little unfortunate for his kind of career and kind of development, because he is someone who has been a healthy scratch for a lot of games over the last few seasons. He has missed a ton of time, not because of injury, not necessarily because he's been, a poor defenseman for this Rangers team or has been kind of the worst defenseman on this Rangers team. He's just kind of been that healthy scratch. He's been that number 6, kind of 7 guy for the last while now, and it does seem like it's probably hindered his development and obviously, ability to just kind of play games or really kind of continue to grow and get better and kind of prove himself at the NHL level. And that is definitely something that as he gets more into his mid-20s and he's looking to sign some more contracts and make some real money and obviously kind of have a nice NHL career, he's going to probably need to be traded away from the Rangers to end up kind of getting a full kind of long-term possible spot on an NHL team. And even if he did stay on this team past the season, I really don't see him being a truly kind of long-term piece for this Rangers squad. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to see him traded away. I think for the Rangers, you get back a draft pick or possibly a prospect, or maybe it's like a young player kind of swap there, maybe someone else in kind of Zac Jones situation where we're maybe bringing in a different kind of defenseman or a different kind of forward possibly. That could make a bit of sense there potentially. But either way, just kind of get rid of Zac Jones there. Let him go out there, find a new team that are willing to probably give him more of a kind of role. And, I think at moments he has definitely clearly been, not the worst defenseman on this team, but he has still been healthy scratch. So I'm sure at this point, it's just best for both sides to move on, and whatever asset you get back in return, it could be a decent one for someone like Zac Jones. And I think he is a fine defenseman. Like I said, I think he's NHL caliber. It's just, come playoff time, me personally, I don't think I necessarily want to see him out there. I think if he's your number 7 or 8 kind of guy come playoff time, that's great and all, but come playoff time, I want to see more of a kind of, personally at least, a bit bigger, a bigger defenseman, more defensively kind of reliable. And I like the kind of puck moving ability that he does have, the good offensive game for sure, but it's just that lack of size and physicality and the lack of overall defensive play on moments and just that kind of big, just tough defenseman out there. I think that's what you really need come playoff time, and the Rangers are a team that definitely don't have enough of that. So if you have someone like Zac Jones out there, that definitely is kind of going in the wrong direction. So in my opinion, trade him away, get whatever you can back. So now let's take a look here at the 4 trade destinations that the hockey writers have come up with for Zac Jones. So let's take a look at them here. And the first one is the Edmonton Oilers, who definitely are a playoff caliber team and are obviously a squad who potentially could go on a very long playoff run. And, what I was trying to say earlier is I don't necessarily think that Zac Jones, can't at all really be a, playoff caliber defenseman, but I just think mainly on this Rangers team with the way, our defense core was built the last couple seasons, it's just not ideal to kind of have a guy like Zac Jones going in there because, this Rangers team hasn't had a bunch of huge, tough, physical, really good defensively reliable defensemen on this decor. We've had players like Keandre Miller, who has, not been the greatest defensively and is also not a very tough player. A guy like Trouba, he may have that size and toughness, but defensively definitely had his moments of being a pretty big liability, especially in that series against Florida. And then, some other guys as well. I mean, obviously someone like Foxy, as good as he is, he's not some super physical force out there. So there's obviously a lot of other things around his game. And I'm not saying he's, part of the problem on this decor by any means, but, he's also a guy who's not that physically tough, demanding kind of guy out there that, other players are and that you kind of need a lot of come playoff time. So obviously Foxy, I'm not saying he's the problem by any means necessarily, but I'm just kind of saying, this decor already doesn't have a ton of just pure kind of just physicality and size and toughness out there. So adding in a guy like Zac Jones on top of that, who, isn't the greatest guy defensively and can't really necessarily hold up his own defensively all the time. I mean, I'm not saying he's a negative completely or maybe as bad as Trouba was at moments in the past, but he definitely is not a great kind of shutdown guy. So adding into a decor like this for the Rangers is definitely not the most ideal situation. So a different kind of playoff decor definitely could be a better fit in my opinion. So the Oilers definitely could very well look to kind of add in a depth puck moving kind of guy like Zac Jones. That can make a bit of sense there to be their number 6/7 defenseman to provide some pretty solid depth there and possibly make an impact somewhere on that third pair. And the three other teams that they do have as possible destinations for Zac Jones are the Calgary Flames, Seattle Kraken, and the Ottawa Senators. So it could make sense for all of those teams to be possibly looking to add in a guy like Zac Jones. For the Ottawa Senators and the Calgary Flames, they're both teams who are kind of trying to compete for a playoff spot, trying to, sneak into that wild card somewhere. So if they can do that and add in a guy like Zac Jones, he could be a nice little piece for them possibly. So, that could be a nice little depth kind of defenseman move for either of those squads there to kind of add in a nice kind of, bottom pairing puck moving defenseman, could be a nice addition there. And he's not necessarily a liability defensively by any means, but at moments he can, at moments he's not. So I do think Zac Jones could end up having a pretty nice impact on a team and could possibly end up netting maybe like a mid-round pick. Maybe it's like a fourth-round pick, fifth-round pick at the upcoming deadline. And him being healthy scratch as much as he has been over the past, long while now at this point, not just this season as well, it definitely can't help his value. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what he does go for. But if it is anything less than a fifth-round pick, it is kind of hard to trade away a guy like Zac Jones because I do think he has some pretty good talent. But at this point, it does seem like he's probably going to end up getting traded away. Although, you do kind of hope that we can still net back a decent little return here for someone who, at one point was a pretty kind of highly touted, or not necessarily super highly touted, but, definitely had some kind of hope for him as a Rangers fan to make a pretty good impact on this team. Although it doesn't seem like it's going to happen with the Rangers, it very well could happen at some point with another team at the NHL level. And for a team like the Kraken there, they obviously made that trade for Kakko, and it ended up looking pretty good so far for them. So maybe they end up looking to go out there and acquire another New York Rangers young player. And next up here, we'll take a look at the kind of trade news / update that we did get from the Hockey News article, where they ended up getting a quote from Frank Seravalli, a very reputable NHL insider, and he ended up saying, quote, "Right now, they're trending to be sellers," talking about the Rangers. NHL insider Frank Seravalli said, "But I still don't believe that Chris Drury is going to sit back and do nothing. I think they're going to be buyers for the long haul, but maybe not fixing this season, if that makes any sense." And I think that's kind of what I've been talking about over the last little while now is, I do think that there are some selling moves that this team kind of needs to make and really must make, sending away guys like Riley Smith, Will, Borden, obviously other guys as well, like Jimmy Vesey possibly. There are some other guys, maybe a Jonathan Quick if a team's looking for a decent kind of backup veteran goaltender. There are some other options out there like Ryan Lindgren as well, who I do think could be traded away as they have expiring contracts this upcoming summer, who could net back some decent draft capital or prospects or, a decent young NHLer. So I think there are some guys who, definitely should be traded away from the Rangers pretty much no matter what in a selling move, unless this team goes on some absolute, 15-game winning streak here over the next while. This team should pretty much be, sellers here and kind of selling away some players. And, you don't have to just sell everything away and it's just kind of label this as a complete kind of selling deadline here. You can also be buyers. And that may sound a little crazy, but if you do buying the right way for the long haul, like it is saying here in this quote from Frank Seravalli, I am more than okay with that. And buying for the long haul, to me, is doing what the Seattle Kraken did. They obviously traded away, a couple draft picks, a third and a sixth round pick, as well as Will Borden, a pending unrestricted free agent defenseman there, who very well could end up getting flipped the deadline. But they made a buying move pretty much to go out there and get a good young NHL forward. And obviously they got Kaapo Kakko, and so far that has looked phenomenal for them. And a guy like Will Cuylle, like I said earlier, has taken a big step back offensively since Kakko's left. So obviously Kakko having a great start with Kraken there. Cuylle taking a big step back kind of offensively so far since he's left. That's looking like a phenomenal trade so far for the Seattle Kraken, and a pretty kind of awful one, I'm going to be honest, still, I think, for the New York Rangers. Now, it does kind of depend on what we do with Will there. If he gets traded away for some good draft capital, then awesome. That may make that trade look a little better. But either way, right now, the Kraken are the clear winners of that trade. Kakko has looked really good for them. Will Cooley's taking a big step back offensively. So I think making some kind of a buying move, but going after someone who is in their mid-20s or kind of younger, I think that's a good move, man. You go out there, you get someone like Kakko who's in that kind of situation there where maybe they're a former kind of high draft pick or a former high prospect, and things just aren't kind of working out fully, and maybe the team is looking to trade him away. I think there definitely were some kind of impacts there on kind of what Kakko said about being healthy scratch that one day that maybe kind of led a bit at least towards him getting traded away. But there were some rumors for a while about Kakko possibly getting traded away, and maybe there's a player out there that is kind of in Kakko's spot there that's been in some rumors for a while now, kind of a young guy who maybe hasn't quite found his kind of role yet at the NHL level, but still has some potential, and maybe we end up seeing the Rangers trade away a couple draft picks and a kind of a rental contract to go out there and possibly get a decent young kind of player who can also help this team right now, maybe kind of compete and try and make it to the playoffs, but also be a nice piece for the long-term future as well. I definitely think that could be a really smart decision for the Rangers, and that is exactly what the Kraken did. The Kraken are not a team who are probably going to make the playoffs, but they still made a buying move, sending away draft picks, future assets, but got a good young player to help them for the long term. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed it, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. If you want to check out these two articles for yourself, I'll have them both linked in the description for you to read if you obviously want to. And definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on how this New York Rangers team has kind of played, as well as these two pieces of news that we did talk about in today's video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Let's go Rangers.